In this lesson, we'll talk about how to add the circular cutout for the hole. To do this, we'll be using the extruded cut command. This will be another sketch-based feature, so we'll first need to create a sketch before we can create the actual 3D feature. Now I've shown you how you can create a new sketch by clicking on the default reference planes or on the face of the model. And up to this point, we've always started a sketch and then launched the feature. However, if I go ahead and click on the extruded cut command from the feature toolbar, SOLIDWORKS prompts us to either begin a new sketch on a plane or planar face or use an existing sketch, which we have not created yet. So, to begin this sketch, I just need to pick a plane or planar face. I'll rotate the model a bit and sketch on this plane here. Again, notice we are now editing sketch 3 and the sketch icons appear, all indicators that we're in the edit sketch mode. This will be a simple circular sketch, so I'll launch the circle tool from the shortcut toolbar by pressing the S key on my keyboard. I won't worry too much about the placement of the circle here as I'm sketching, since I'll come back in a moment and add a geometric relation to position it. I'll click once for the center and again for the radius. At this point, I'll press Escape on the keyboard to get back to the selection arrow. For the design intent of this cutout, we want to ensure that the circle is always centered about this arc here. There are a couple ways to do this. To add the geometric relation, I can select the circle and while holding the Control key down, select the arc. This will bring up a pop-up menu that shows you the available relation options that are possible with these two items selected. I can make them co-radial, tangent, or concentric. Concentric is the option that I want to use here. When I select it, you can see the circle snaps into position. To show you another approach to adding the relationship automatically, let me delete this concentric relation. A second approach is to click on the center point of the circle and we can snap it onto the center point of the arc. But first, we have to make it visible in the graphics area. To do this, with the mouse button still pressed down, simply hover over the arc for a moment, and you can see the center point appears in the graphics area. Now that the center point is visible, I can simply move my pointer near it, and when the yellow flag appears, we know that SOLIDWORKS is adding a geometric relation. Just to be sure, you can always press the Escape key to get to the selection arrow and try to move the geometry. You can see that the center point can no longer move and is fixed into its position, but the radius is still underdefined. To define the radius, I'll use a dimension, so I'll launch it from the shortcut toolbar, click on the circle, and place the dimension in the graphics area. I'll type in 20 millimeters and press Enter on the keyboard. Now that the sketch is fully defined, we can continue on with the extruded cut command. In the first few examples, I showed you how you can switch over to the Features toolbar and launch the Extrude feature. But since we began this sketch by launching the Extruded Cut feature, SOLIDWORKS automatically knows the sketch is going to be used for an extruded cut. So, if I simply exit out of this sketch, SOLIDWORKS automatically launches the Cut Extrude command. The Cut Extrude is very similar to the Boss Extrude. You have options such as choosing an end condition or a direction. But there is one option that I'd like to point out here. When you're working with cuts, a very common end condition is the Through All option here. Through All ensures that the cut will always go through the entire part. So even if the part width changes to, say, 200 millimeters, SOLIDWORKS knows to extend this cut up through the end of the part, regardless of the size. If I were to use a blind end condition, at this point, the 15 millimeter depth cuts through the entire tab. But if this tab were ever to change to, say, 20 millimeters, SOLIDWORKS wouldn't know to update the cut. So in this case, it's a good idea to use the Through All end condition to ensure that it always cuts through the entire geometry. At this point, I can click the green check, and the cut feature is added.